Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Lavelle here, CEO and co-founder of Harbor, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Donskoy share some of her background and some of the things that she's learned. And so with that, I'm just going to turn it over. Dr. Donskoy, I'd love to have you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background and what makes you so passionate about this area of science and research in pediatric care.
Sure. I'm Innessa Donskoy. I'm a pediatric sleep medicine physician at Advocate Children's Hospital, and I'm also the director of sleep education for the pediatric sleep medicine department there. I also teach at the University of Illinois in Chicago as one of the adjunct professors for the sleep medicine fellowship. So I spend my time doing most of that, and then when my free time with my family as well.
And we got to chat a few times over the last couple of months. You have a lot of expertise in sleep training yourself as a mom of multiple children as well. So this is going to come from personal experience and the medical side. And what I love about that is you can share where theory meets practice, and sometimes that personal struggle that we've all had as parents. So maybe we'll just start off and jump right in. What are the kind of biggest myths that you hear when it comes to pediatric sleep, whether it's infant or newborn or toddler, that seem to just continue to show up in your conversations with parents and patients?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones, I don't know if I'd call it a myth, but maybe a little bit of a misconception, misperception, is that sleep is just sort of a milestone or like a reflex that's going to happen naturally at some magic age. And we've been given a number of ages by great academies trying to kind of create norms for us. But people assume that sleep will just come and it'll come just fine for their family and with little input or work on their part. The truth is that sometimes that very much happens. Sometimes you get a kiddo who's really skilled in falling and staying asleep independently. They do it beautifully. I call that the lucky ones. But more often than not, thinking about it this way as a skill is vitally important. The same way that you're going to help your kiddo learn to crawl and then cruise and then walk and then, ride a bike and do algebra one day. In that same very hands-on way, sometimes more often than not, we need to help our children learn how to sleep, how to settle, how to fall asleep, and then subsequently stay asleep. It's very much a hands-on skill that requires sometimes more input than we're ready to realize.
Yeah, that's great. And that analogy of riding a bicycle, I'd love to unpack that. When we first chatted, you said, when it comes to teaching the skill of sleeping, there's going to be some bumps in the road and some emotions and some reactions. Could you share that analogy that you have so eloquently shared with me around, when you teach your child to learn how to ride a bike, sometimes there are those reactions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is the way that I describe it for families that I'm working with closely as well. I change up my analogy day to day, but the truth is that any new thing, right, that we want our child to master, we need to be right there, helping them from the very beginning, trying it out, seeing how it goes. If we're talking about the bike, right, they're sitting there, you're holding the handlebars, and eventually you will need to let go. You will need to let them try to do it. I think what you're alluding to is, sometimes when you let go, they might struggle, they might fall, they might cry, right? This is like a very loaded word in the sleep community. Cry it out. Do I let them cry? The focus is so much, right, on that challenging moment. When really, if we step back and think about what we're doing, is we're helping our child learn something that's maybe hard for them right now. And they're going to struggle through it. And you know what you're going to do when they fall and cry is you're going to help them back up and you're going to cheer them on. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, you did you see what you did? You went for a few seconds. Great work. Let's try again and again and again until we get better at it, right? We're not crying it out, teaching our kid to ride the bike or do math, right? That's what we're struggling with right now at home. We're helping them harness a new skill, right? We're helping them do something challenging. and we're
Yes.
showing them that we're their biggest cheerleader.
Yeah. And I remember when we first talked about it, you said if you were to go in to work on Monday morning and someone were to say, "What did you do this weekend?" You wouldn't say, "Well, I just let my kid cry." You would say, "I helped him learn how to ride a bicycle, or I helped her learn this new skill." And yes, there will be some bumps in the proverbial road along the way. So I really appreciated that analogy. I think it's one of the best ways that it's kind of been explained to me along the way. You'd also shared a research article about that study of the mother-child bond in allowing your children to express emotions overnight, and that ultimately it is not something that is going to cause long-term trauma to allow your child to cry for a little bit as they continue to learn and develop that skill of sleeping. And I'm curious, that study, not that you were an author of it, but what stood out to you in that, or how have you used that study or those learnings from that in communicating with some of your patients who are worried that if my child is crying or struggling with sleep, I must be doing something wrong?
Yeah, I think the article you're referring to, the American Academy of Pediatrics, I think it's their position statement on the fact that sleep training or helping your child learn to fall asleep in all of its different iterations, right? There is
Mm-hmm.
fully walking out, what we call full extinction, or a lot of people refer to as cry it out, just letting your child cry until they fall asleep, to graduated extinction, which is walking out, whether it's in certain specific periods of time and then checking back in, or gradually fading out of the room, physically getting more and more distant. Yes, that sometimes comes with the child feeling that challenge and getting upset, right? Getting upset that it's hard to do a new thing. But the data really supports that when we help a child practice falling asleep on their own, it will help them learn that skill. The attachment between the parent or the caregiver and the child is not only remains intact, but I think one great thing that came out of that study was it showed that caregiver well-being, specifically maternal well-being in that case, was improved. And that's not surprising to anyone who's a mom or a parent, right? When we help our child learn something new, we feel like a success as a parent, then they are resting and we are resting as well. And really the family moves forward, right? Children don't live in isolation. They live in a home, hopefully a
Yes.
home with a loving family, where all of those pieces need to kind of live and work and rest together in unison. So it was
Yeah.
nice that there was not only a comment on the bond that remained really, really strong, but also how much better caregivers did, because then they were more present for their child throughout the day.
Right. That's great. Thank you. All right. So let's hop into recommendations. For parents who are about to have their first child, what are some of the recommendations that you would give to them directly? I imagine you don't necessarily see a lot of them because you're seeing them after they have kids. But for those parents that are getting ready to have their kids, what are some of the recommendations that you have to help set up that healthy environment or begin to prepare themselves for the process?
Yeah, and they have to be sleep related recommendations, right?
Yes,
I,
yes.
I think I think you know the first thing that comes to mind really is that hopefully parents are entering this new exciting chapter in their life. New parents are entering it with supports around them, right? Either it's older generations, friends, the internet is a wealth of knowledge, books
Hmm.
as well. There's a lot of advice. There's a lot of very well-meaning and even very well-informed advice, even coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics and American Academy of Sleep Medicine. But one of the most important things to hold on to is that your child is going to be unique and they may not fit the mold completely.
Yeah.
And you may have to think about things perhaps in a little bit of a different way. I see this sometimes to seasoned parents as well. Your second child might not be the same as your first in many ways, in the things that they're great at, in the things that they struggle with. And sometimes that might be sleep as well. So just be ready and be a little flexible, I think is the
Sure.
is the most important recommendation.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. There are things that can start to set up an infant for success with sleep, from day one, from moment one. Sometimes when I'm speaking, especially to postpartum nurses, or those in the newborn nursery, the guidance that they give as a parent goes home with their new baby, is vital. And sometimes they're giving incredible pieces of advice that I then like to unpack for a family, right? Most
Sure.
newborns will go home and someone will say something along the lines of, try to put your baby down when they're drowsy, but not asleep, right? I love that recommendation. And sometimes when I try to tease out, well, why are we giving that recommendation? It's the why that people are a little bit unsure of. So, what I'd love parents to know is the reason we recommend that is because your sleep training from day one. From day one, when you put that baby down, almost asleep, but not quite yet, you're already letting go of the handlebars for a moment. You're already giving them a chance to try and practice that skill of falling asleep on their own. And we can do it every time you put them down, which is going to be hourly, not every 2-3 hours in the beginning, right? So each of those moments is a very special opportunity to have like a lot of intentionality, right, behind how you're putting them down.
That's great. Wonderful. And how about in terms of the sleep environment? The American Academy of Pediatrics has safe sleep guidelines, but in terms of things that, even you have done in sleep training your own children, what are some of the things that you feel like are just absolutely critical to help establish those healthy sleep habits early on?
Absolutely. So, the safe sleep practices are, without question, putting a child on their back without anything else in their sleep space, having them their own sleep space with a nice firm mattress, no extra sheets, bedding, pillows, stuffies, those stuffies for later. So that goes without being said. But one other nice thing that I like parents to know is that when their baby comes home, they are also still building what we call their circadian rhythm. Right. So sleep is really controlled by two big processes. One is called our sleep pressure. That idea of, I get sleepy enough and I fall asleep, and then I sleep it off, and then I wake up again and I build sleep pressure. It's a cycle. Babies build up sleep pressure very, very quickly, and then they need to pay it off throughout the day. So they are constantly napping throughout the day. And as they get older and they're able to consolidate wake and stay awake for longer periods of time, they can tolerate a little bit more sleep pressure, leading to longer and longer, periods of play and eating and interaction between those naps. But the other big controller is that part of the brain that's sort of your internal clock or your internal time zone, what we call our circadian rhythm. That piece is really under development for the first few weeks of life. It's unclear exactly when it fully solidifies, but babies basically train themselves to live in the time zone of their home. So if you guys are up at X time, and that's when the house is loud, and that's when it's bright, and that's when there's a lot of activity, this baby will learn. And I'm saying it almost as a conscious way, but it's very subconscious. It's a part of the brain that trains itself to, this is my morning. This is when I start my day. So from day one, you can start to reinforce that for your child too. If this is when we want the day to begin in our home, that is when things are on and bright and a little louder. And the same goes for the evening. If this is when we want evening to be in our home, this is when things get quieter and a little bit more dim and a little bit more calm and relaxed. It's sort of unfair to ask the baby to live in a different time zone than everyone else is operating on. So you may want to sit and think with your partner, the rest of the family of, when is our family aligned to? When is our night and evening? Because that will be a reasonable expectation for this infant too.
That's great. Thank you. All right. So I know this is our first chat. I'm sure we'll have many more, but we'll round it out with what are a few tips that you have for parents with toddlers? So out of that infant and early sleep habit schedule. So call it 1 to 4 years old in that phase of a child's life. You can feel like you're on top of the world. My kid is sleeping through the night. I'm doing great. And then, there's so many changes that happen when they start walking, when they start talking, when they start going to Mother's Day Out or to preschool. And so with all of that comes disruptions. And of course, this is not even talking about when you travel or when you're dealing with time zone changes, or the dreaded fall behind or spring ahead from the time of day, daylight savings. So with that said, just generally toddler years, what are some things that you offer to parents who are struggling in those wonderful but challenging years of sleep?
Oh, that's beautifully said. You left out like starting to drop naps in there as well.
Yes. Yes.
All the
Yes.
good things. That's such a fun age and such a challenging age in ways other than sleep also. The biggest, there's several pieces of advice I have, but one we have to have going into it is that we have to have a relaxed approach. Children are so emotionally like aware and in tune of the sort of the pulse of the home. They know when we're stressed, they know when we're frustrated. Sometimes we're not hiding it, but even when we are, they can feel, right? They can feel what's going on and how everyone else is feeling. If
Yeah.
we kind of, I don't know, fake it till you make it. We have to have a little bit of like an almost eerily relaxed approach to help our children also feel that way, right? Because no one ever fell asleep stressed out or because someone was telling them you need to go to
Yeah.
sleep right now, right? So
Yes.
we have to adopt like this is what I tell moms, like if you're not feeling relaxed, take a moment, take a 1 minute, walk into a different room, take a deep breath, listen to a song, get yourself in a headspace where you can really show up for your toddler. And when they're
Yeah.
dysregulated, right, you can help bring them back. So that's
Yeah.
that's the first piece of it. Um,
Yes.
the other piece of it is that sometimes we have to name the problem first, meaning that if a toddler is struggling with sleep, we really have to break it down for ourselves as to what we mean by that. Are they having a hard time falling asleep? Are they having a hard
Hmm.
time staying asleep? Are they having a hard time napping? Are they having are they falling asleep just fine, but are they very restless in their sleep? Are they waking up unrefreshed after what it seems like undisrupted sleep? In order to start, brainstorming solutions, we really have to kind of name the problem and name it well.
Hmm.
This can feel
Yeah.
really overwhelming. Sometimes this is what we do during the first visit with me is we unpack what we even mean by saying my kiddo is really struggling with sleep, right? So we really have to
Yeah.
break it down because the approach for each of those avenues will be very, very different. Especially at that, special magic age when the naps start to diminish, right? They start to get
Yeah.
shorter. They start to get irregular. We start skipping them one day, but taking them the next. We also have to be very ready for sleep to look different night to night,
Hmm.
right? There's a tremendous focus on having the exact same bedtime every single day, right? Someone out there has propagated this, I guess, myth also, right? That your child really, really to be healthy, right? For you to be a good parent has to go to sleep at the same time every single day. But if you take a child that sometimes wakes at the same time at a different time every day, sometimes naps, sometimes doesn't, sometimes those vary in length, and sometimes their days look different, that doesn't
Hmm.
really make sense as a goal anymore, right? We're better off leaning into a little bit of flexibility and maybe even, delaying bedtime sometimes if that's what the child needs in this moment to be relaxed around sleep, for us to be relaxed around sleep, for falling asleep to happen easily, right? And
Yeah.
seamlessly and successfully. And so really understanding what the problem is is going to help you find a solution that makes sense for you and your family and your child in this unique moment. It kind of doesn't matter
Yes.
what your neighbor did when her child of a different age and gender, and lifestyle needed for sleep. Approach each moment sort of as a unique opportunity to just explore what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So as a first opportunity to share some of your experience with Harbor customers, maybe my last question for you would be, with your position as a pediatric sleep doctor, how do families come to work with someone with your skill set and background? So I know you're doing research and you're teaching and you're doing so many great things when it comes to sleep and helping families, but you also see families as patients. And so what is it that is the sort of path for a family to say, I don't need to read another book or have someone give me some coaching. I need to speak with a doctor who can really help me with this. What does that look like?
It looks like a million different paths, really.
Yeah.
Some parents will find me online, just go looking at our institution's, website. Some parents have tremendously amazing and proactive pediatricians that will give them kind of all they can to help with sleep until they've gotten to a point where they say, maybe we just need a little bit of extra support. So they'll get referred to me. Some patients actually don't come to me for difficulties with falling or staying asleep. Sometimes they'll come to me for difficulties with the quality of sleep itself. So maybe they're restless in their sleep. Maybe they're snoring or making noise in their sleep, which is never normal. That's also a big myth, right? That sleep or snoring is cute or a sign of a deep sleep. It's actually the sign of obstruction in breathing and sleep. So a lot of times patients will get referred either by their pediatrician or their ear, nose, throat specialist for snoring, for a workup of that. Some will come to me through their psychologist or psychiatrist. That I'm seeing a lot of teens who have their own special breed of sleep issues as well.
Yes.
So there's a million different paths, but the truth is that what I offer, I think the most is just a partnership and thinking with a family about what exactly is going on with their child and what's the best kind of path for us to find a solution. So rather than being, I don't know. I mean, I've had schooling, but they live every day and night with their child, right? So they're far more the expert than I am in what's going on. So sometimes it's just asking the right questions and thinking with them through how do we name what's going on? Because that will tell us what to do next.
That's great. Thank you. Do you have any active research programs or trials that you're recruiting for right now that would be helpful to spread the word on?
Thank you. So we're not actively recruiting right now, but we're doing a whole lot of work right now in the education aspect of this. So helping, like you said, I apologize for that, any communities, right? Any families, any schools, any networks who need support on doing those first early steps for screening, right? For screening and bringing awareness to sleep disorders. We're doing a lot of work on what is needed to sort of empower people who are seeing those kids way before we do to intervene and maybe avoid a need for a visit with a sleep specialist altogether.
Yeah, that's great. Dr. Donskoy, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your wisdom, and we'll look forward to hopefully many more of these opportunities to come. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.